Today is Thursday, April 17th, 2025. Miles Spieler and Alejandro Osegueda are interviewing Cincinnati Municipal Judge Tyrone Yates about his experiences growing up in Evanston, Ohio, and the significance of King records to the Evanston community.
Did you grow up in Evanston?
I didn't grow up in Evanston, but I did attend church there, where I attend now for the last 61 years. So I have a lot of experience in the Evanston community. That foundation is established at St. Andrew's Episcopal Church at 1809 Rutland Avenue, which is near the intersection of Montgomery and Dana. So I have a lot of experience in the Evanston community.
And about when was that when you were growing up?
Well, I started attending the church at 10, so that would have been February of 1964 was when I began, and have continued to attend the church and be also involved in the leadership of that church in the Evanston community. As a matter of fact, where the UDF gas station is at that corner, there used to be a White Castle. And a favorite thing for us as teenagers to do was after church to go over and get some White Castles, or even before church. But it was, at that time, a very stable, middle-class, largely African-American community with a lot of African-American professionals who had not yet moved out. From, I would say, the 70s through a couple of years ago, it was moved to primarily working class African-American community, and now Evanston is considered Hyde Park West. Now, I've actually forgotten, a lot of people moving in, I think you'd call it gentrification. I completely forgot. I had a house in Evanston that I lived in for 13 years until just 2 years ago. So I've had a long relationship with the Evanston community. I lived at 1734 Fairfax Avenue. So what's the house in Evanston that has the American flag flying out in the yard? A lot of great experiences there.
So what was Walnut Hills like when you lived there?
Well, I'm going to start with some history for you, if you don't mind. Walnut Hills, when I was growing up, was terrific. It was a great community, peopled with, I think it was probably largely working class, with African American, with a lot of African American professionals. Of course, it has changed. After that, it's become much more impacted by poverty, joblessness, even some violence. But historically, growing up, I thought Walnut Hills was quite idyllic. As a matter of fact, until my father took me with him on a visit to a friend's house in North Avondale, which was a completely different neighborhood. I thought North Avondale at that time would remind you of Hyde Park in the ages of 10, 11, 12, blah, blah, blah. But I attended Douglas Elementary School in Walnut Hills, which would be considered an excellent school at the time that I was growing up, and attended that school, which was originally built, the first brick one, I think, was built in about 1912, 1913. And so I would walk to school every day after the first grade. My parents had a car service take me and my sister to school for those first few years. And then we attended, because it was in the neighborhood, Mount Zion Methodist Church, would have been the Methodist equivalent of St. Andrew's, and I'll talk to you about St. Andrew's and Evanston a little bit more. at a later point. So I went to Douglas, wonderful teachers there, still remember lessons that I've never forgotten, that have exceeded all the other schools that I've attended. And I've attended a lot of schools in my time. But more to the point, it turns out that I didn't know that my family had a major stamp, historical stamp, in Walnut Hills. It turns out, I always knew that my great-grandfather was a college man. In fact, he graduated from Ohio State University in 1903 in one of the first classes in the new College of Pharmacy there. And he settled in Cincinnati around 1906, 1907, and had a pharmacy right at the corner of Alms and Chapel, which is right across the street from Douglas School. I never knew that as a child. I didn't know that I was kind of a historical legacy. And he and his business, they made a lot of money in their business. He and his doctor and business partner. And that business was there from about 1908 until 1922, 23, 24, when he later moved to Baltimore for business. So there was a powerful historical legacy in my great-grandfather. I think he graduated from Douglas in about 1915. My father in 1937, and then me and my siblings. So had a great, and then of course walking to school, we'd walk past the Harriet Beecher Stowe House every day. And I had no idea that of the significance. It's like going to the library on a school trip, something I hated. And so going on a school trip to the Stowe House was, at that time, just as boring to me. But now I'm a great admirer of the house and its setting in Walnut Hills. And I've had any number of relatives, a couple of great aunts who were big landowners in Walnut Hills. And people still remind me as I go through Walnut Hills today that of my Aunt Sally and my Aunt Nettie. So going back to Douglas School, where our house was at 3270 Beresford in Walnut Hills, I would go out in the backyard and play every day. And guess what I could see from my backyard when I climbed up in a tree? Walnut Hills High School. I could see the dome from my backyard. And I could hear the band practicing when they were doing outside practice. And in the crucible of Douglas School, the teachers kind of directed us to aim to attend this school. And my homeroom was room 205 off the front entrance. But I didn't stay very long. I had a number of challenges when I came to the school and left at the second half of my first year and moved to my uncle and aunt's farm in Mount Orab, Ohio. So I was actually a farm kid for a number of years before I came back. But one of my, I was often down in the salt mines. I was in the 7th grade choir when I was here. So at any rate, I've always admired this school. And so if you have any questions off of that in terms of Walnut Hills, I'm happy to address them.
Can you tell us a little bit about your parents?
Yes. My mother her name was, she's deceased now, both of them. But my mother's name was Jo Ann Dickerson Yates. So it was my great-grandfather, Dr. Archibald Henry Dickerson. That was her grandfather. And my mother was grew up in Madisonville. And like what people most say about their mother, she was quite extraordinary. When I look back on her lessons, particularly as she got to be a senior citizen, she tried to walk around the block and things like that. Her favorite, she went to Walnut, Withrow High School. Her favorite subject was civics, which seemed to kind of run in our DNA because my great-grandfather, when I went to take things out of my grandfather's library, I took away my great-grandfather's 4-volume set of George Washington. And I majored in history myself at the college level. And I consider myself a historian now. I'm working on a book right now. And my father, his name was William Artist Yates Jr. And he was the fairest man I ever knew. I don't think anybody was a better driver than Daddy either. But my father was a manufacturing chemist for Freeze and Freeze, which was a flavor-making company that was based here in the Carthage area and had 8 subsidiaries around the world. And I used to love to go to this is in the early 60s. I used to love as a little boy to go to work with him. You like to go to work with your dad. And I remember when he was mixing formulas, he had some kind of pre-computer thing, and his fingers would just dance across the keyboards, figuring out the formulas. And he was always so decent. I only remember getting one spanking because my older brother, Billy, had a date, had my father's car for the date, and I said to my father, well, what do I get? And he gave me a nickel or a quarter or something. I threw it on the ground. And he took me in the house and gave me a little spanking with a book from the bookcase of all things. But my father died when I was 15 in 1968.
Were there any people or places that were most important in Walnut Hills?
Oh, yes. I mentioned the Harriet Beecher Stowe house, of which, as I got older, I've been a member of the board and I'm a life member of the Harriet Beecher Stowe house. And I think I played a role in its $1 million renovation, which is extraordinary because the Ohio Historical Society typically gives out small grants. At the time that they did the renovation to restore it to its original building, the Ohio Historical Society gave them $1 million, and it may have been in part because I'd been the representative to the Ohio Historical Society when I was a member of the Ohio legislature, and because of my interest in history and continuing involvement. Mount Zion Methodist Church, and there were a couple of housing areas. Braxton Campbell Court was one, which was, I suppose, built after or near the Second World War, where a lot of working class but very solid African Americans lived. I mentioned Mount Zion Methodist Church. It had been the church of Mayor Theodore M. Berry, of Samuel Ross Wright, who was president of the NAACP, of former Vice Mayor Marion Spencer, for which the Spencer School is named in Walnut Hills, and a number of other physicians, and it was kind of the Methodist equal of St. Andrews, which had many, many African American first Board of Health member, first United States Marshal, many members of various fraternities and sororities, the college roommate of the Olympian from Ohio State University, Jesse Owens, and any other, the first African American graduate of the UC Medical School, who were all members of St. Andrews, eventually Evanston, when it moved from the West End to Evanston in about 1962, 1963. But it was a very stable area. The headquarters for the Cincinnati Herald, the black newspaper, was on Lincoln Avenue. First Baptist Church there at Park and Lincoln, an extraordinary Baptist church with a great many African American leaders. Not only that, the Lane Seminary is right next to Thompson McConnell Cadillac. The Lane Seminary was a hotbed of abolitionism near the Civil War. And once they got forced out of Cincinnati, the seminarians, they helped to establish Oberlin College, which was the first university or college in the United States to admit women and to admit African Americans. As a matter of fact, one of the children from the Amistad ship, you've heard of that movie, one of the children attended Oberlin. One of the United States senators, one of the two United States senators from Mississippi in the Reconstruction period were Oberlin graduates. So the Lane Seminary there, Douglas School itself, as I indicated, the public library there was, I think, funded largely by Andrew Carnegie. It's just, Walnut Hills is just a historical place and a magical place for me. In my, as an adult, I lived in East Walnut Hills on Cross Lane, and for many years, and I used to run and walk about 4 miles every day, 3 miles every day, and I came to be sort of well known for traversing and loving Walnut Hills every day.
And how about coming over to Evanston? What places and people were important in Evanston?
Well, as I say, all of the members of St. Andrews, which had a large community drawing from Evanston. So school teachers and entrepreneurs in that community. In recent years, I've had a close association with the Evanston Community Council. I was a member of Cincinnati City Council for almost 9 years and 7 years in the Ohio legislature. So Evanston was a part of my district, and had to engage in the Evanston community a great deal.
Did you listen to music produced at King Records?
I'm sure I did. As a child in the black community, we only knew one station, and that was WCIN. And I was never exposed as a child to any other station. That was the only station that we listened to in our home that I recall. So all of what you call the soul music, and certainly James Brown, right? His music, although it's probably fair to say that while WCIN, and they used to have a great news service, I had other things to do, like play baseball, ride my bicycle, watch the cartoons, the Beatles, read So the radio wasn't a staple, but certainly, surely all of the artists who were active at King would have been on the radio list. In the last several months, I've been meeting with the rector, that's the priest at Redeemer Episcopal Church in Hyde Park, and we are going to partner St. Andrews and our leadership and Redeemer and their leadership on a capital campaign that Redeemer is just beginning to raise money for the restoration of King Records.
What was the impact of King Records on the community? Do you have any specific recollections about King?
No. I have no specific recollections of King Records in that regard. It's only been in these recent months, and certainly it's the kind of history, I mean, my own experience as a historian is that African American history is very often erased, across the country as a result of presumably systematic or institutional discrimination, racism. And so the opportunity to preserve the spaces in Walnut Hills and King Records and across the country are invaluable. So I'm committed to that.
Did you know anybody or somebody connected to King Records?
Oh, sure. Bootsy Collins is a friend of mine. I don't see him very often, but we recognize each other and say hello when I see him at public events. I don't think I've ever met James Brown, but his family is going to enjoy a lot of royalties into the future, because you hear his music on commercials, and it's so very well produced.
How has the neighborhood of Evanston changed in your lifetime?
Well, it's changed. I think Evanston is poor at this point, although it's moving into a great transition where you'll find now $400,000 homes being built and homes being renovated. In fact, the house that I bought in 2003 in Evanston at the corner of Fairfax and Fairfield, I bought it as to homestead, to make sure that someone of community significance was there in the community as a glue. But it has suffered from, probably since the late 60s, from people who were professionals in black moving out to suburban areas. So it changed in that regard. I think that minor crime is probably greater now than when I was a child. But Evanston is coming back. They have a strong community council. It has the recreation center that it didn't have. The recreation center wasn't built until the mid-90s, as a matter of fact.
How has Walnut Hills changed in your lifetime?
Well, Walnut Hills, when I was growing up, it felt idyllic. You had your neighborhood store, Max's store. The owner was named Max. A lot of nuclear families that were strong, neighbors that were strong. It was a real community, and working class people had the kinds of values that have created the kinds of young people growing up who walk the line, who listen to their elders, and that kind of social glue isn't there as much as it should be at this time. And so it's a struggling neighborhood, but there's a lot of people moving in. It's much more diverse. When I was a child, you could go for a year without seeing a person of a different race or ethnic group on the street. You might go 5 years. But now Walnut Hills is much more diverse, and you see everyone. A lot of young white families moving in, and that's all a good thing.
I just have one question. A lot of people have told us that I-71 being built through Evanston changed the community a great deal. That there used to be lots more stores and things like that. You, of course, were living in Walnut Hills, so maybe that wasn't.
Oh, it's quite relevant and quite true. In fact, my family home at 3270 Beresford is the last house on the street when all the other houses were taken for I-71. And it really devastated I-71 through there and through Evanston, devastated the communities by breaking them neighborhoods up. And, as a little kid, from about 5 on, my mother used to take my sister and I every evening in the summer over to what was called the Jewish Center, which was over on Blair. And so you could go around the corner, go across the railroad tracks, up the hill about 500 feet, and there was the Jewish Center. And it was a hub of recreational activity for, at that time, the African American community. The Jewish community had moved out of that part of Avondale. But the black community and many people in the middle class who were black would utilize. There's a baseball field, marvelous swimming pool. I don't remember if there were tennis courts there. Might have been, I just don't remember. But it was a place, as I say, that my mother took us as kids to every day in the summer to watch baseball games, to watch people swim, or to swim. I don't remember what we did exactly, but it was a great community and civic center. Evanston had the same impact. It turns out, much to my surprise, when I was in college, as maybe a freshman, a sophomore, I was hired in the Gilligan administration, of all things, as a summer intern on the highway department, and my job was to inspect the quality of the concrete that they were laying down on that very street. I knew nothing of highway making decisions about where highways go. But 71 would have had a quite a negative impact on community development and growth in Evanston and Walnut Hills. Now, most recently, I've been talking to people about this, and I've analyzed it this way, that the fact of the matter is that I don't know a single, quote, poorer community that, or working class community where, does anybody know where you don't see I-71 going through Indian Hill, do you? Or Mariemont? Or Hyde Park? And that's because typically poorer communities in the census tracts don't have the political muscle, organization, and even experience to be able to challenge private public decisions like that. Highways are like that all over the country, probably all over the world.
Can you talk more about how St. Andrews impacted the community over the years?
Absolutely. St. Andrews, when it moved to Evanston circa 1962, 1963, still maintained a powerful impact as it had when it was on Mound Street. And it had to move from Mound Street downtown in the West End because of I-75 coming through. And but the membership was very strong and radiated across almost all the institutions, public institutions in Cincinnati. Places like GE Aerospace Engineer, where aerospace jet engines, where a cluster of aerospace engineers, including my godfather, were senior aerospace engineers at GE. It had so many teachers among the members. It was just unbelievable. And as a matter of fact, the way that I became a member of St. Andrews at 10 is that I attended what they call a pancake supper in 1964 with my grandfather. And when we got to the basement, they call that the undercroft in the Episcopal Church. I saw almost all my teachers from Douglas School. And I saw my favorite teacher, my homeroom teacher, Mrs. Lucille Conliff. And I said to myself, this is the place for me. College presidents, or a college president, has been a member there, Dr. Rufus Atwood, who was president emeritus of Kentucky State University. So when he retired, he and his wife moved to Cincinnati and joined St. Andrews. Jesse Owens, the Olympian, used to visit there, and any number of other professionals. We've had several priests who've been on the cutting edge of leadership. Have you ever heard of the corporation and Jurgens Lotion? Andrew Jurgens was one of St. Andrew's priests, the son of the founder. We have members now who used to own Baldwin Piano. You know where the Regency is next to Withrow High School? That used to be the Wilson Estate. All those 19 acres up there that it was built on, and they're members of St. Andrews. So we still retain a great legacy of members, as I said. And then St. Andrews had a number, and we retain a number of social outreach programs. St. Andrews housed the first Girl Scout troop for African Americans, the first Boy Scout troop for African Americans, a great forum series where speakers would come in all the time. It was just a terrific, an employment service. You name the kind of outreach, work with women, educational programs, and we still maintain some of those programs today. And by the way, I'm the senior warden of St. Andrews, which means that I'm essentially the chairman of the board of trustees, and also on the reparations commission of the Diocese of Southern Ohio, and vice chairman of the trustees of the diocese, which governs the William Cooper Proctor Fund, which endows the diocese as one of the wealthiest dioceses in the United States. So my involvement my grandfather and my great-grandfather, all that goes back about 113 years of St. Andrews. They'd be smiling that their grandson and great-grandson would have this kind of involvement in a diocese that they have been a part of.
So thank you so much for your time here.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that question. Just 2 weeks ago, because Cincinnati, did you know that Cincinnati used to be the third largest city in the United States? You knew that. Probably the census of 1820, 1830. So Cincinnati was Chicago before Chicago was Chicago. And you may not know, but you probably do know that Mount Adams is named for John Quincy Adams, because John Quincy Adams, who was the 6th president of the United States, and while not an abolitionist, he certainly to be admired because he was greatly anti-slavery, particularly after he and his father, John Adams and John Quincy Adams, were the only 2 presidents of the first 15 who were not slave owners. But he came to Cincinnati in about 1843 in his post-presidency to dedicate the first observatory of the United States that was built here. And then after he left, of course, it was named Mount Adams. So that's a great story. But the story that I want to tell or share with you is that there's a very, very private club in Cincinnati that most people don't know about, called the Literary Club of Cincinnati. It is the oldest literary club in the United States, begun in 1849. Among its members have been 3 justices of the United States Supreme Court, including 2 Chief Justices, Salmon P. Chase and William Howard Taft. Stanley Matthews is the other Supreme Court justice. There have been many governors, 9 federal judges, a great collection of business people, 5 United States senators, and me. It's limited to 100 members. And 2 weeks ago, I was elected as a member of the Literary Club of Cincinnati, of which historically, and as a historian myself, greatly proud of, I own a great number of books that are associated with Cincinnati, including a first edition of the first African-American historian, whose name was George Washington Williams, who was the first African-American member of the Ohio legislature, but he wrote a history of, called it the History of the Negro from 1619 to 1880. And he was really the first professional African-American history in this country. So I have those volumes, which you can't really find them anywhere, as well as a first edition of Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin. And I have 2 first editions of Dr. Du Bois's suppression, the suppression of the slave trade in the United States, which were printed in 1896 out of his dissertation. So I come to the Literary Club. Oh, by the way, in order to get into the Literary Club, it's harder than pledging a fraternity or sorority. You have to be nominated by, I think, at least 3 people. And since it's a closed society, there are 99 millionaires in me. I'm the only one who's not a millionaire. Everybody else is a millionaire. And then you have to, in order to get in, you have to write a paper that is sent to an original historical paper that is sent through the Board of Management. Many people, as I understand it, have had their papers returned. to be edited and all that. Mine got through on the first swipe, 2,000 words, and it's relevant here because my paper was on the history of Walnut Hills and my family. I'm so proud of that. My great-grandfather, as I told you, who was active starting one of the first African-American pharmacies here, was in the first class of the first training class in the United States for African-American officers in the First World War. And he used the pharmacy as a place for people purchasing tickets for art events, and he held big meetings for veterans as they came home from the war because of the great discrimination at that time. The upshot of it is that the United States did not want black officers, or for that matter, black soldiers in the First, Second World Wars, but in particular in the First World War.
Awesome. Thank you so much.